Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, a shiny employment attorney, and today we're talking about podcasts. Apparently, no, we're not doing a podcast because I don't think anybody cares what I have to say. I think people want me to answer their questions, and I'm happy to do that. But beyond me answering questions, I'm gonna shut my mouth. Um, no, we're talking about podcasts as in you're at work and you want to play your podcast. And we've actually got a kind of almost like a grab bag of questions here because we've gotten a lot of not weird, we've just got a whole bunch of different questions about this. First question: I want to wear my headphones at work. Can I? Yes, unless your employer says no. It's that simple. Um, Next question: I want to listen to my podcast. My employer lets people play music and videos and podcasts out loud without headphones, but won't let me play the podcast I want to play. Don't I have rights? No, not really. It's the workplace, and unless your employer is the government, the right that people always reference here is the right to free speech. They're like, I have the right to free speech. I can play whatever I want to play. Well, the right to free speech is a right to be protected from the government in your speech. And frankly, the government's done an awful lot to erode even that right in recent years. But it generally is not going to apply to your private employer. And your private employer, while on the job, can say, hey, I don't want you to play that podcast. Now, if your employer was letting people play all kinds of podcasts, and let's say you hypothetically were playing a Black Lives Matter podcast, and your employer was fine with other people playing Proud Boys or white supremacy, and I don't whatever. I don't know a lot about these groups, so a white supremacist podcast or something like that. Then they say, hey, none of that Black Lives Matter podcast. Well, that's a different story. That's more about discrimination to me than it is about you just not being able to play your podcast, right? I think the person who asked this question just wanted to I actually know the name of the podcast. It was I think the Tim Dillon podcast, and this person, it's a comedian's podcast, kind of a raunchy, say anything, bleeding edge of what's even legal to say on the internet, comedian, and this person wanted to play that in the workplace, and I think this person, thinks this comedian's really funny and sees no problem with it. From the employer's perspective, this comedian's talking about wild, raunchy stuff. He's talking about politics, religion. This comedian, he's on the edge, right? Kicking down doors, saying crazy stuff. Yeah, that employer's got every reason to not let you play that podcast, right? You never listen to it at home. But there's going to be a variety of people in that workplace who are going to find what that comedian is saying offensive. Are they right? I don't know. But your employer doesn't care. Your employer just wants everybody to shut up and go to work, right? So they're completely within their rights to be like, no, you can't play the Tim Dillon podcast. It is what it is. Listen to it at home. Listen to it in your car. You don't get to listen to whatever you want at work, right? We had one more. Oh, last podcast one. Person has a day job. Person has a podcast. Person says some aggressive things in their podcast. Maybe they're political. Maybe I think they're some stuff about vaccines, some stuff about the deep state, that kind of stuff, right? Employer says, hey, not comfortable with your podcast. Need you to stop making that. Or we're going to have to part ways. You're going to have to get out the door. We're going to fire you. Again, the question we get is, but First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. Is your employer the government? It's not? Oh. Yeah. Freedom of speech doesn't really apply. Right? It's not that you can't say those things. You can definitely say those things. What your employer is saying is not that you can't say them. Your employer is saying you can't say them and keep on working here. Got to make a choice. It's a private business. It's a private business. They can say that, right? You don't have the right to say whatever you want and then have no repercussions for it. That's not how the freedom of speech works. Freedom of speech is you can say what you want and the government shouldn't be able to stop you. But boy, people are going to react to what you say and they might not think well of you. That is actually how it works. And the people in this instance are in fact your employer, your supervisors, your managers, the owner of the business you work at. And they might say, wow, boy, you exercised that First Amendment right. You sure did. You said some things. There's the door. And that's generally speaking going to be legal unless you're engaging in protected speech. If you're worried that your speech might be protected and your rights there have been infringed, comment down below. I'll take a look at the speech. I'll try to give you a thought on whether or not it was protected. Or if I can't, I'll try to hook you up with a civil rights attorney who can give you a more detailed rundown of that. Okay? I'm missing like 2 more questions. I forgot them. And I'm not going to go search for them while I'm making the video, because then I'm going to look like a moron. So if you have more questions, post them down below.